What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm doing something diabolical, and I'm going to ask you guys to forgive me right now, but man, this team has been absolutely everywhere over the past couple of weeks, and it is so annoying to go up against when you're trying to run something fun, but you know what they say, if you can't beat them, join them. Now, I get a fair few comments here and there saying they love the spice, but it'd be really interesting to see how I could perform if I ran a hard meta team for once, so that's what I'm going to be doing today. Anyways, with that being said, let's get straight into the question of the day. Are there any Pokemon in the Go Battle League that you just cannot bring yourself to use despite how strong they are? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, and you guys didn't think I was actually going to run that bullshit team, did you? No, that is not what we do around here. It is, of course, April Fool's, so I wanted you to believe that I was run something absolutely ridiculous for today. Usually, of course, you guys know I will swap channels with Jamie Finn for the day. Of course, he's only very recently got back into making content, so we did try and reach out, but we just couldn't quite get things to work on his schedule. But don't worry, I will still have maybe hopefully a live stream coming up with Jamie Finn himself in the near future, so do look out for that. But anyways, into this battle, and we are running a very familiar style of team for the channel, Dragon Double Fire with Shadow Lampent on Heat Wave as the sort of feature Pokemon. Here, unfortunately, Chandelure just missing out on reaching a second charge move, but Lampent gonna come in a little bit bulkier than the Chandelure, gonna no shield as they fire off the Sky Attack. I can go for a full Ember Farm Down, coming out with the Energy Ball coverage, and that is going to be important here as the opponent still has a Jellicent in the back. They fire off the Surf. Honestly, Surf, despite being resisted, probably KOs Hydreigon from this range, but Brutal Swing grabs the final shield, and that's gonna be game over. I believe the opponent has farmed up to back-to-back Surfs, but it just does not matter. Surf gets the KO, but we've already got the Energy Ball loaded. We win CMP. Energy Ball takes out the Surf, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Shadow Hydreigon into Talonflame. So this is going to be a positive matchup for me. The opponent's going to be safe swapping into Primeape, and I respond with my Lampent. Now I'm going to let the first move go through here as the opponent is going to go straight for Rage Fist, and that does quite a lot of damage. Honestly, a little bit more than I was expecting. And that might actually put me into range where they can farm me all the way down. But Lampent just barely hanging on there, living with 1 HP in a dream, reaching a second Heat Wave and grabbing both shields. At this point, I really do not mind using both my shields here for my Shadow Chandelure. Of course, Rage Fist is now boosted. It would get the one shot, and especially double boosted. I will have to double shield, but now I've got so much energy. The opponent's going to come in with Shadow for Alligator. They make a very nice catch there, swapping out as I throw the charge move, but I go for an undercharge, and it works out perfectly. As I get the Dragon Breath farm down, I can now throw a Fly on the CMP tie with a Hydro Cannon, and Fly non-stab, but it takes out Shadow for Alligator, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We see Hydreigon into Florges. Now, this is a really awkward matchup for me because they're probably going to have Chilling Water to hit for super effective damage into my backline. So, I stayed in with Hydreigon for a while there. I was hoping maybe to catch like a Disarming Voice or something, but they probably don't even have it. They're probably on Trailblaze or even maybe a Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast, whatever the other charge move is. Can't really remember. It doesn't really matter. They're always basically just going to spam Chilling Water. But either way, the opponent allows me to reach back-to-back Heat Waves here. Now, unfortunately, I was debuffed, so that doesn't quite KO, but that puts them into range where I can just come in with the Chandelure, and the opponent are not even going to bother attacking there. That is absolutely fine with me. We avoid taking any Volt Switch damage whatsoever. Now, of course, I will still need to shield a Chilling Water here, but now I can look to overfarm, fire off the Flame Charge. They will still outpace to the next charge move, but I've already got Brutal Swing loaded. I try to snipe, but the opponent makes a nice catch there. However, they're catching onto a shiny Shadow Fortress, and at this point, all I need to do is either force the opponent to throw some energy or farm up to back-to-back charge moves. We farm up to back-to-back, Brutal Swing gets the KO, and despite being resisted, this is easily going to be enough damage to take out the Florges when it does connect. The opponent very clearly just rage quit out of the app there. We take out the Florges, and I'm able to take that game. I still do not understand why people do that. But anyways, into the next battle, Wigglytuff in the lead. That is not great to see. I'm going to be swapping out, and it is actually going to be the exact team that I was pretending to showcase here on the channel, except not in the same order. The weird thing about that team is that I guess you don't really need to run it as an ABB double normal team because Wigglytuff and Fur do function quite differently. Either way, we're not in a best position, but we do grab a shield advantage. However, Chandelure is definitely going to struggle up against the Forest, so I'm in a tricky situation here, but I'm going gonna fire off the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing is going to connect. It does big damage, but the opponent actually swaps back into Wigglytuff, and that does give me a lifeline. Now, they will outpace here. I kind of need to shield just because if the opponent does want to shield their Wigglytuff, I cannot risk even a single charm landing on my Hydreigon. So at this point, we farm up to 100 energy. Flame Charge gets the KO. Even if they come back in with Jellicent, I'm going for a Flame Charge anyways because I did expect a Ferret to come in, and the opponent comes in with the Ferret, but they end up shielding. Now, that does still make it a little bit tricky for me because Jellicent, I believe, has a Shadow Ball already loaded, and if this Ferret has Brick Break, then we are actually still in big trouble. I'm going to shield here. I have to shield, but it is the Brick Break, and now despite the fact that Shadow Ball is resisted, I'm debuffed. Shadow Ball gets the KO there, and despite the fact that I played reasonably well considering the team comp, unfortunately, still just barely not able to overcome it, and we end up losing that game. But GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Galvantula in the lead. Very spicy on the opponent's end. We fire off the Brutal Swing. I'm going to try and catch a lunge. It doesn't work out for me, but the opponent swaps into a Azumarill. And I don't really mind that. We've got Energy Ball 4 coverage, and this is going to hurt. Energy Ball does huge damage, and it will force the opponent to throw some energy. Now, Lampent is going to resist Ice Beam, but unfortunately, they can now Bubble Farm me down. But Hydreigon does still have some residual energy here, so I'm going to come back in with the Hydreigon. Of course, I am resisting the bubble damage, and I can full send the Fly. Fly should get the KO from this range, and the opponent is not going to bother shielding. Then I'm going to come in with their final Pokemon, which is going to be a Diggersby, and we look to be in a fairly decent position. Of course, Chandelure is going to be a Fire-type Pokemon. Typically, Diggersby is going to do very well into Fire types, but I'm able to swap out, and I'm able to catch a resisted Fire Punch. Not only that, their quick attacks are double resisted by the Ghost typing. All I need to do here is safely shield this. They bait with a Fire Punch. I really don't care. We can fire off a Flame Charge. Flame Charge gonna boost up my attack stat. Flame Charge gonna grab the final shield. They swap back into Galvantula, but it doesn't matter. We are now boosted. They lunge, they debuff me, but Incinerate still gets the KO. We Incinerate, farm down the Diggersby as well, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's win there into the next battle to see a Quagsire in the lead. So this is definitely where I want to see it for this team. Of course, Lampent does have coverage with Energy Ball, and even a Shadow Ball from Chandelure will pretty much one-shot the Quagsire, but those are just very awkward matchups. But anyways, I'm going to shield here as the opponent is going to farm up to a potential Stone Edge, but then they bait with the Aqua Tail. At this point, I do overfarm just a little bit, and unfortunately, I have to double shield here, but they bait a second time with another Aqua Tail. We can now go for a Brutal Swing. I will outpace them before they reach the next Stone Edge, and Brutal Swing actually gets the KO from that range. They come in with a Corviknight. I'm going to swap out, catch the Charge Move onto my Lampent. I swap out one turn early to get the Ember through, and that means I will now outpace to a Heat Wave before they get to the next Air Cutter. So Heat Wave is going to be coming through. It grabs the final shield. They're now going to look to overfarm a little bit, which is going to make things a little bit tricky for me because they will now outpace my Chandelure to a Charge Move, and actually they'll get to a Payback before we get to the Flame Charge. But I've got the energy on my Hydreigon, so I go for one Incinerate. I put them into range where Brutal Swing gets the KO, and once again they're going to have a Fortress in the back, but again they're going to be on Volt Switch. They cannot farm me down. They do need to overfarm here, but honestly I put them into range where a single Incinerate would KO, so they had to farm up to back-to-back Charge Moves, but Fly from Hydreigon gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's win there into the next battle. Wigglytuff in the lead once again. So once again, not ideal for me in the slightest, but they come in with a Medicham, and that is not so bad for me at all. Unfortunately, I do not have any Ghost type coverage here, so we go for Heat Wave. That does decent damage, but I don't think it's going to put them into Ember farm down range. However, Ice Punch and Dynamic Punch are both resisted. Ice Punch, single resisted. Dynamic Punch, double resisted. So they do go for the non-stab move. However, Psycho Cut's dealing more damage this season. This is actually not as comfortable for the Lampent as I thought it was going to be. I'm now going to look to throw on CMP, but the opponent, it looks like they're committing to a full farm down, and actually the opponent able to flip that matchup with the Medicham. That is super surprising to me, but we come in with the Chandelure. Dynamic Punch is double resisted, but that still does like 30% of my HP, and at this point I make a big mistake there. I realized if I threw the Charge Move, I wasn't going to reach a move up against the Wigglytuff, but it doesn't really matter. I cannot win this game now. Flame Charge doesn't do enough damage. They're able to charm farm me down, and that's really annoying, but once again we end up losing to a Wigglytuff lead. But GG's our trainer into the next battle, and the the good leads still aren't really here because we see a Bastiodon instead. This one is definitely a little bit more playable. For the High Dragon, we can actually just afford to stay in here. Now, we can go straight for a Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing actually going to deal decent damage. We've already got them into the yellow health range. We fire off a second Brutal Swing, and we now get them into the red health range. They try to snipe with a Wigglytuff here, but I'm able to react just about in time there before High Dragon loses all of its HP. But we go for Flame Charge. Flame Charge gonna be shielded by the Wigglytuff, so I'm now gonna look to match shields here as they fire off the Swift, and now I can outpace them to the next Flame Charge. Actually, no, never mind. We end up getting outpaced there by the opponent, and we lose the one shield scenario up against Wigglytuff. Chandelier, that is really embarrassing, bro. But anyways, they're gonna come back in with the Bastiodon, and of course, I'm gonna have to shield this. But we've seen Bastiodon and Wigglytuff so far. Is this gonna be a throwback with a Shadow Victory Belt in the back? Honestly, Lampert is kind of hoping that is gonna be the case here. I swap out. I thought I could reach a Brutal Swing, but I don't get there. But it is the Victory Belt in the back, and if we can live just one Smackdown, I should be able to win this game. The opponent not able to farm me down. We actually get the Ember farm down instead, and I'm able to take that game. But honestly, like, trainer, you must not have fun in the Go Battle League if you're still running nonsense like that. But into the next battle, we're going to see Diggersby in the lead, so we're going to go straight for a Brutal Swing. I might try and eventually catch a Fire Punch here, but of course, they're not going to go for a Fire Punch just yet. But the opponent actually makes my life a lot easier. They just swap out straight away into Corviknight, and I can go straight for Heat Wave. Heat Wave is going to connect. It gets the KO there. That is huge for me. They now come in with the Diggersby. They throw just before the next Heat Wave, so very good timing. But you know what? I'm actually going to shield this, and I'm going to go straight for another Heat Wave. I realize Diggersby has 0 fast food pressure into the Lampert, so I really don't mind this matchup. And I might even double shield here. Yeah, I'm going to double shield here. I'm now going to swap back into my High Dragon, save the Heat Wave on my Lampert, just in case they are double weak to fire in the back, which is definitely a possibility. The opponent is going to be forced to go for a Scorching Sands, which they do. But if they're weak to fire, it is absolutely game over. I'm going to come in with the Lampert, and the opponent, at this point, they have just given up there. You can see we get credited with the win. It's probably like a fortress in the back, so the opponent concedes the match, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's win there into the next battle. I'm going to see Charger Bug in the lead. So, this is a fine matchup for me because I am resisting the Volt Switch damage, and I will be looking to try and catch an X-Scissor onto one of my back Pokemon. We go for Brutal Swing. They do not throw straight away, so I swap out one turn early. I'm able to catch a double resisted X-Scissor, and Incinerate gets the full farm down. But we are hard punished by a Gastrodon. But because we snuck the Incinerate, we get the Shadow Ball, and they don't shield, but they've got a Bastiodon in the back here. So, this game is not over just yet, but we should be looking fine. I'm actually going to come in with the Shadow Lampert as I can deal neutral damage with the Embers and spam Heat Waves fairly quickly. First Heat Wave is going to be shielded, but I can reach a second Heat Wave before they fully farm me down. At this point, I believe they're probably going to no-shield this next move. We come back in with the High Dragon, and these Dragon Breaths, despite being resisted, it's a one-turn fast move. It's going to add up over time. I fire off the Brutal Swing. I throw it on CMP, which was quite risky there. I did not mean to do that. I kind of just messed up my timing, but either way, it doesn't really matter. At this point, I was trying to go for a Fly BM, but I realized I'm actually getting very low. I might as well just play it safe here. Brutal Swing gets the KO up against the Bastiodon, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's win there into the next battle. Galarian Weezing in the lead. That is not ideal for me in the slightest. And even worse, the opponent's going to come in with a Spiritomb. Now, some weird fast move animations there. I'm not sure if the opponent was lagging. It looks like their fast moves came through, but it just looked a little bit stuttery. Either way, they get the full farm down, which not great for me at all there. If I was able to grab both shields from the opponent, then maybe we had a slither of hope. But honestly, they've probably just got an ABB style team. Might be a second Ghost type or a Dark type in the back, in which case, we just have 0 chance whatsoever. But I fire off the Brutal Swing. They're actually going to double shield the Spiritomb. I come in with the Chandelier. Of course, I have to shield this now. The opponent gonna go for a Rock Tomb, but it is gonna be an ABB style team. They've got Shadow Sableye in the back. There is literally nothing I could have done in that battle. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes sometimes in the Go Battle League, and we end up losing that game. But GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle. Gonna see Turtonator in the lead. Great lead matchup for me. Again, the opponent gonna safe swap into Corviknight, and Lampert just so spammy to reach that Heat Wave now, pairing with Ember, and again they don't shield. That gets the one shot, but Turtonator is going to completely wall my energy. Not only that, they double resist everything, but the opponent doesn't know we don't have any ghost type coverage, so they end up shielding, and then they farm up to 100 energy. They force a CMP tie, and Heat Wave, it is going to connect. It doesn't do much damage, but it should now allow me to get the KO with a Brutal Swing, plus a few Dragon Breaths. So come in with the High Dragon, of course, gonna have to shield this. The opponent full sends the Dragon Claw before swapping into Azumarill. Now, as is typical with teams like this, Azumarill is usually a bit of a core breaker. However, we're still in a fine position here as I am resisting the damage. We swap into Chandelure. I tried to catch an Ice Beam or something. Unfortunately, the opponent holds onto the energy, and Chandelure is not even going to live the play rough, but you're going to see that actually doesn't even matter, as now I can fire off the Fly, gonna grab the final shield, and now they will grab the final shield on my end, but that's okay. Turtonator is still, I believe, 2 Incinerates away from the next Dragon Pulse, or Dragon Claw, whatever it was, I can't really remember. Either way, doesn't matter, as Brutal Swing gets the KO, and now I can outpace the Azumarill to another Fly, gonna hit for neutral damage, Azumarill already very low, it gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there is the next battle. We're going to see Doublade in the lead. So this is going to be a positive matchup for me. I can just barely outpace them to a Brutal Swing. So I'm going to throw straight away, and then I'm going to swap out of this matchup. Brutal Swing, going to be shielded. I swap, and the opponent actually goes straight for Sacred Sword. So I'm able to catch it onto my Lampent. Of course, that is double resisted. The opponent now comes in with a Wigglytuff. And if this is their best answer, then that's amazing for my backline, especially since it's also avoiding the High Dragon, which is very nice. The opponent can fire off the charge move. We are a bit tankier than the Chandelure, so I can live an Icy Wind. I'm going to no shield and then fire off another Heat Wave. Honestly, don't really mind what they do here. They're going to no shield. They come back in with the Doublade. I'm going to come back in with my High Dragon. And once again, I'm going to look to try and make a catch onto my Chandelure. Able to catch a double resisted Sacred Sword. And the opponent was just super weak to fire types. They've got Go-Goat as their final Pokemon. I can safely shield. I'm going to farm down, come out with 100 energy. There is nothing the opponent can do. So they save me some time and they concede the match. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. I see Shadow Talonflame in the lead. So, a positive matchup for the High Dragon, but they swap into Kingdra. Now, this could get very dicey if the opponent double shields, but they actually let the Brutal Swing go through. That is huge for me because I have no way of taking out the Kingdra without my High Dragon. So, very happy to see it go down here. We are incredibly low, but they're now going to come in with a Seaking. Seaking is quite problematic for me, but we go for Brutal Swing. I'm swapping into Lampent, and I'm able to outpace and get to a Heat Wave on CMP. This is, of course, resisted damage, but the opponent ends up no shielding. Now I'm going to no shield as well. Drowrunner hoping will get the KO, and it does exactly that. Now, of course, I expect the opponent to swap out straight away. I'm going to come in with the Chandelure, and if the opponent throws straight away, I could be in trouble, but they overfarm, and that means I can throw a charge move. They were one turn behind, so they don't sneak and Incinerate through. Now I'm boosted. Incinerate, gonna do huge damage. I can shield once. They're still one away. We get the full farm down, and I can actually Incinerate, farm down the Seaking to take that game. So, GG to opponent there into the next battle. I'm going to see Shadow Hydreigon into Shadow Quagsire. So once again, this is definitely where we're going to sit for the team, but the opponent's going to swap into Licky Licky. My backline is going to struggle up against this Pokemon, so I'm going to stay in, going to fire off the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing going to deal decent damage in all honesty. I'm now going to no-shield the first move, and then I will look to try and catch the next Body Slam onto my Chandelure, but also, once again, swapping out one turn early, getting the Incinerate through. Body Slam double resisted. We Incinerate, farm them down, and if they come back in with the Shadow Quagsire, I'm actually going to bait with a Flame Charge. There is no way they don't shield this. Flame Charge now going to boost up my attack stat, and even Incinerate's resisted damage are starting to chunk. I'm now going to shield this as the opponent, I believe, is one away from the next charge move, so I'm now going to full send a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to grab the shield there, and now try and snipe with my Hydreigon. However, I didn't realize Brutal Swing doesn't quite get the KO, and they bank a charge move, and now that is a bit of a nightmare for me. I'm going to have to come in with my Shadow Lampent, but I make a huge mistake. I thought Lampent, being fairly bulky, I can shield once, live the next Side Shock, farm up to back-to-back Heat Waves, and it's going to be game over. However, you're going to see Togekiss is going to do a lot more damage than I was expecting, and unfortunately, I cannot farm to back-to-back, and now that is game over. They've got to move on the Quagsire. They can farm me down, come out with the Arctotail loaded, and of course, Chandelure. All shields are down. Arctotail gets the KO, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. However, of course, if I just went straight for Heatwave, if I no-shielded the first move, I believe Chandelure would have lived 2 more mud shots to Incinerate farm down the Quagsire, and I still would have had a shield. So definitely a winnable game for me, but either way, GG to our trainer. Into next battle, we're going to see a Diggersby, so we go straight for eligible. That does huge damage, and now the opponent is going to fire back with a Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands is not going to drop my attack stat there. I'm now going to fire off a Heatwave just before they reach the next Scorching Sands. Didn't want to force a CMP tie this time around, because I feel like they'd be more tempted to shield and then throw another charge move. But again, it's going to be my nemesis from the previous battle, Togekiss, that comes in. We can fire off the Heatwave. Heatwave going to be shielded by the opponent, and the opponent is going to throw just before I reach the next charge move. I'm actually going to shield this. They went for Aura Sphere. That is a heads-up play, because I believe that probably KOs anyways, but on the odd chance that I tried to catch onto Hydreigon, that would have been absolutely brutal for me. So really nice play on their end, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Gliscor, and unfortunately this Pokemon is going to completely decimate me now. All shields are down. The opponent full sending the Acrobatics, easily getting the one-shot there. I think they don't even need to go for a Sand Tomb. Instead, they can actually just settle for another Acrobatics before we even get close to reaching a charge move. Acrobatics number 2 gets the one-shot. They can just wing attack, farm me down, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's up in there into, I believe, the final battle of this video, leading into a Talonflame. So once again, great lead matchup for me. The opponent's going to try and swap and catch a Brutal Swing, but that's fine with me. We've got so much energy now. We fire off the Fly. Fly gonna deal decent damage. It won't quite two-shot them, but this will put them into perfect Dragon Breath farm down range. Now, I did really consider trying to catch a Last Resort, but on the odd chance that they're not running it, that would have been very risky. So instead, I just shield once, I go for the full farm down, and again, I'm met with a Azumarill. Now, this is not that bad this time around. I am able to catch a resisted Ice Beam onto my Shadow Lampent. This should also bait out the Talonflame once again, and it's going to do exactly that. The opponent's going to fire off a Flame Charge, which I'm able to resist. I'm able to tank that relatively comfortably and still reach a Heat Wave here, but Heat Wave also not going to be shielded. This is still fine with me. At this point, I'm actually going to come in with my Chandelure. My Hydreigon is so loaded on energy that I'd probably go over 100 if I tried to farm them down, whereas now we are 1 away from a Shadow Ball, and I'm going straight for it. However, it looks like we get 1 turn bringing lag as the opponent gets off 3 bubbles there, which should not be the case at all, and that might be costly for me because not only do they deal more damage up against the Chandelure, they now have more energy to throw into Hydreigon. So the opponent is now going to look to overfarm here, but Hydreigon just barely able to reach the charge move on CMP, coming in clutch. Fly gets the KO up against the Azumarill, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.